Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to 2021. How many of you didn't think you were going to make it through 2020? So, I am Paul Sterling. I am a relationship intimacy coach, the best-selling author of Argue Less, Love More. Anna, can you give us a tiny bit about who you are and where you are? And I just, before you even do that, I just want to say that part of the reason I'm so excited today is because I have a lot of amazing friends, and Anna is one of the most compassionate people in the world that I know. And I think partly because she's been through so much hell in her life and challenges, and hopefully it's okay that I say that. But some people, when they go through tough things, you have a choice. You either get bitter or you get better. You either get smaller or you expand. And so Anna's been through a lot of challenges, and she's chosen to get better and better. So Anna, tell us a tiny bit about your adventure and how you became someone who's a relationship coach and has wisdom about this.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for that beautiful introduction. I've always, ever since I was little, been fascinated with relationships. I grew up in a family that felt really dangerous and violent, and I could just tell as my innate wisdom as a child that it just wasn't right. I knew what was right, but I didn't know how to get from the patterns I had been downloaded with that got me in a lot of trouble and can really wreck relationships to what I knew was possible.
So I got to interrupt it periodically. So people, what we would love to do, this is interactive. Even though we can't see you, we would love for you to comment, and post. And so if you connect to what Anna's talking about of like, not having, and I can totally connect. My family of origin did not demonstrate great relationships. My dad was amazing at some things. Carpenter, he could take on anything, he could get shit done. But boy, when it came to relationships, the role model he gave, I had to deconstruct it. It totally sucked. So how did you go from that, Anna, to being in a relationship where it was remarkable?
Well,
or to have remarkable relationship
I
skills?
want to give a sort of an easier answer, but the first answer that comes was with a lot of work.
Damn, no, we want the quick pill, we want the easy answer. And that's what most people want. They want the Hollywood answer. Like, I'm sorry, wrong answer. Can you give me the pill where I take it and tomorrow I'm skinny and in great shape and have great muscle mass and I don't have to work out?
Yeah. But
So I'm going to riff on it just another second. So there was a not a great show, but a show called The Biggest Loser, and it was about people losing weight. And if you think about it, the people who won, did they take a pill and just sit around and not change anything? Like they ate the same stuff, they behaved the same way, or they just took a pill and they suddenly lost weight? Or was it the people who showed up at the gym and busted ass and worked out? So back to you.
I was going to say, though, another part of the journey is I got passionate about it. I got excited about it. I got really invested in it. And I found other groups of people and courses and classes, and I still do courses and classes. I do feel it's like a muscle. You can get in really good shape, but if you stop working on it, it's easy to just go back into the slump, back into the old patterns.
So it's like the relationship gym. You got to keep showing up, hey, I worked out once a year and that's all. It's like I did my workout for the year.
And I will say, you said something like you're lucky to have really amazing friends. Just about everyone I know, it is worth it. It's such a pleasure. Even the last conversation we had, and I said how remarkable it was to be able to communicate from this level. There's so much more richness in life and so much more, I don't know, bounty is kind of a strange word, but that's what comes to me. It's just really exponential, the reward that you get for putting it in.
So thank you. We're going to dive into it and we're going to give you some real tips and tools on patterns because it's easy to fall in love. It's a much more difficult to keep love alive, and patterns are what gets in the way of our relationships. And so one of the things that would be helpful, is for all of you out there in Facebook land to just type in a comment. Where are you calling in, or where are you watching from on this brand new day of the year? And I appreciate there's people from all around the world. And I can see some of your comments right here, and we'll respond to those. And some of them I can't see. So here's, I'm going to bring up the screen and we're going to dive into it.
Oh, she's someone that I know from these courses I'm talking about. That's awesome.
Oh, cool. Well, hi, Valadan. And where are you calling in from? Where are you in the world? I'm in, well, we'll start by leading by example. I'm north of Napa Valley, right by a place called Harbin Hot Springs. Some of you might know it, some of you may not. Guatemala. So, ¿cómo está? So I'll run out of my Spanish in about 2 more words. So, gracias. So, Anna, where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I'm in Seattle. I'm so not jealous, but like, moved, inspired. Guatemala must be so warm right now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All right.
So
let's dive in, and we're going to look at the patterns that bring you closer and get in the way. And some of you might go into overwhelm right now. This is how Paul's mind works. And I was watching some videos from Dr. Sue Johnson on attachment theory. And so after watching the videos, this is my notes. This is a flip chart. These are my notes from the whole thing. And so our job today is to take this incredibly complex thing called relationships and the attachment theory and make it simpler. So I'm not going to show you those notes anymore, but you can take a screenshot of it if you want. They're actually my valid notes, and everything in there is really important to relationships. But here we go. So before we go to that one, Anna, do you want to say what a pattern is so that people can actually recognize, like, what's a pattern? And we'll give it some examples.
The first thing that came to mind was, like, I remember the first time something came out of my mouth that sounded just like my mother. And it was something I never wanted to come out of my mouth. But it, it says too small to read. Yeah, all of those notes. He's going to break it down now. He's going to go through some of the, just piece by piece. So it was more to show you how complex it is, really, and like to have that compassion for ourselves. Patterns, well, from what I've studied and the way I understand it, we can all have, which you'll talk about in a minute, our personal tendencies. Like, do you tend to get bigger and louder? Do you tend to just get really meek and people-pleasing? There are survival mechanisms that come from there's a wisdom in it at the time, but there are better ways, to communicate things like violence or passive aggressive or getting really, really nice, but you lose your own needs in it.
Yeah, it's almost like watching a TV rerun.
Yeah.
See, a pattern is a rerun. I'm not interacting with Anna right now. I'm interacting with her pattern, and she's interacting with my pattern. Now, that's not really true. We are interacting, but when we're in a pattern, it's my past is interacting with her past. And we could almost leave the room and let them go at it. Because what happens is we stop being conscious.
We leave the room and our patterns take over the driver's seat.
Exactly. So it's really important to know what it is. It's like when you drive to work. See, the thing that's important is there's supportive patterns and sabotaging patterns. Now, supporting patterns in a relationship, you can have patterns that support the relationship and make the relationship better. Patterns of communicating, like learning nonviolent communication. That's really a pattern of communication that brings us closer. You can learn sabotaging relationship patterns, that reactivity, or I call it BSW. When you use bad, stupid, wrong, if I feel attacked, then I stop listening. My listening switch goes off. So that's a pattern. So what are some other patterns, Anna?
Well, in Vala, I've met through family constellations. It's like the patterns in the family. can be unconsciously handed down or in the larger culture. So, like a pattern of speeding up when you get stressed out. The nervous system, if you're under threat, we want to run, but in communication that could look like often it's the woman nonstop talking to the man. And then his pattern might be to put up the shield and just, the whole reading the newspaper or, yes, talk more. I was joking with a friend. It's like more messages versus more meditation, to either fully engage and just do this fire hose of expression or the retreat, just fully disengage.
Yeah. And here's another one that just came up from Vala, which is disconnecting disassociation. So
yeah, when I was saying you do leave the room, actually, your kind of grounded, healthy self can be put aside for a moment while the survival mechanism steps in. And what survival mechanisms were you taught? Like you were saying, there can be healthy ways to even when you're stressed, but often they were just really, for me, a mess.
So let's go in. I'm going to get into the patterns in a second, but above them, the big patterns there's something called attachment theory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to go from the big chunks to the littler chunks. So in the attachment theory, when we're triggered, we have two different main ways of being. So which one do you want to take on? Do you want to take on the retreat or the pursuant?
I like retreat. Depending, I mean, we do them all, but probably my favorite choice would be retreat.
So do you want to describe that for our viewing audience? What is so there's there's the pursuant and the avoidant or retreating.
Well, I want to start with is interesting because the more skilled I've gotten, the sort of trickier it can look. Sometimes retreat for me looks like I just put on my counselor mode and I'm listening and it seems like I'm really listening, but inside I'm kind of like, I'm backing out of here and I'm just going to make it harmony. I really need harmony.
Right.
Or it can be more, kind of irritating looking, like I hang up the phone or I say, I'm done. It's kind of like, I'm done.
So here's what's happening behind the scenes. So there's the avoidant and there's the pursuant. So the avoidant, it's like when their nervous system, and I've done both, when the nervous system gets triggered, I can't take care of you and take care of me. So I need to go somewhere else and calm me down before I can come back and listen to you anymore. So where this gets...
Oh, I just want to say, because we often judge this as if it's a choice, like it's just an attitude, but I think of it, and it's a real physiological thing. Like if someone was hand feeding you food and you're like, oh, this is delicious. If they start feeding it to you and you're like, my body can't take anymore. I like have to get away from you and that spoon until I, digest it. We digest or process things in the nervous system.
Yeah. And I almost don't like the word avoidant because it's not, and it can be avoiding, but it also can be a really healthy thing for me to do. For me to be able to be with you, I got to digest what you just gave me first. And so that I have room to hear more. And I don't know how to ask for you to just shut the fuck up right now.
I was just about to say, so you're doing a beautiful example of nonviolent communication.
So what I will do is sometimes I will go for a mountain bike ride because then I can be with myself, and especially, and I deal with all sorts of relationships. So I deal with straight relationships, gay relationships, lesbian relationships. I'm going to be careful about like too much of the gender, but the masculine mind can either be there to support the feminine and be like the hero, or I can be defending myself from the feminine. And so it's like, if it feels like an attack, I need to retreat, or I might attack back, which I don't want to do. So sometimes avoiding going to my cave is what I think is the best thing I can do for the relationship. It's not that I don't value the relationship. I value the relationship so much that I don't want to say something that does damage. Does that make sense?
Yes, and when we are in these dissociations or we're in a fight or flight response, I think, if not all the time, the vast majority, it does a lot of damage. And the stronger we get dug into that, the more damage we're creating.
So we touched on the avoidant or heading for the cave, and it tends to be the man cave, the masculine cave, but women, the same. It's needed too. It's just whether you're in your feminine or your masculine. So then what is the pursuant?
Well, I also just want to say, I think for me as an emotionally sensitive person, more sensitive than most, that's probably why, although it's more typical for a male, I prefer retreating, because I'm like I've read, and this makes sense to me, that the male body has a harder time actually managing high emotions. Well, so does an empath who's feeling everything from everywhere. I'm feeling more than most people. Anyway, just as a side note.
Well, it's actually a really important note, because the people who grew up, like I grew up in a violent family, being an empath was part of my survival. I had to be externally focused. People go, "How do you feel?" And I'll go, "I got no idea right now."
How do you feel about me?
Yeah. And so if I'm worried, like for my survival, I had to be able to read my external environment. And then if I wanted to read my internal environment, I needed to get away and find a safe space. Now, the other side is the pursuant. And the pursuant, and I want to get your take on it, but the pursuant, again, nervous system gets agitated. And before I can pay attention to my nervous system, if I'm the pursuant, I need to make sure that we're okay, because I'm worried about being abandoned. And so for me to be able to pay attention to myself, I have to put out the fire out there first. And then I can focus on me. So are we okay? Now, see, here's where it gets crazy. If you're an avoidant and I'm a pursuant, and we get in an upset and you walk out the door, I'm running after you. And the more I run after you, the further you run and the more triggered I get. It's like, no, I can't pay attention to myself till I know we're okay. And this, I literally have had clients that told me he was running down the road to like get his space. I'm not leaving the relationship. And she was terrified that he was abandoning her, and she's chasing him down the road.
Yeah, so, I've probably had maybe more in my areas, but those can come up anytime. You never know the dynamics that, especially the closer you get, the more these unconscious or, early embedded dynamics can come out really strong.
So,
and
go ahead.
Say, the thing is that when you're in the modes, you're just convinced you're right. And it can feel really good to be pursuant, because you're active, you're like actively, how can I say it, releasing energy or taking action in the moment feels like a really good idea. Like, well, if you could only hear me. So I'll try again. That ability to, have some distance and witness what's happening and understand what's going on, like you're talking about with the nervous system, kind of, the stress level of both people.
Yeah. And one of my friends is saying, I'm a pursuant, I've chased down the road. And I can relate to that, especially if, like, I've been both of them. I have been avoidant and I've been pursuant. And it's almost like oxygen. They're leaving with my oxygen. No, you can't go until we're okay. And see what happens a lot of times with an avoidant and a pursuant. Here's where it becomes hell. The avoidant says, cool, I'm going to take an hour, and they go. And while they're gone, they're getting calm. Like, oh, I've calmed down. And they go home, and the whole time they've been gone, the pursuant has been spinning out in their head. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned. So when the avoidant walks back in the door, the pursuant is freaked out. Like, and they're going like, wow. And it sets up the cycle again. So is that making sense?
I just want to say one more thing, because I've done a lot of work in the realm of birth and babies and children, and it is like oxygen. There's a place where it can be it can come from a place of like an infant with the mother, and if you leave, I might die. That's why it's like this strong push to keep pursuing and to keep getting the person to love you back and getting them to see you and to love you. And
Here,
so,
look at, whoops. Here, look at, yes, I can't sleep, eat, or anything until I know everything is okay. And I get it. That makes so much sense. And retreating is all I can do in high intensity energy situations. So there's a perfect, combination for hell. It's, and it makes so much sense. So that's what we're talking about. And if we don't get a handle on it, it makes relationships miserable. So let's dive into this. Anything else on that before I dive into the next part?
let's do it. There'll be more as we move on.
So what we want to look at is what trips the trigger, what starts this dance, and we're going to call it like a dance. So it's good to know what trips your triggers and be able to talk about it. So a couple of years ago, I went over my handlebars on my bicycle and broke the fourth metacarpal in the back of my hand. So that was a wound. And if somebody touched me there, I got triggered. So triggers tend to be what starts a pattern. So let's just get, and if people could tell us, type in what starts your pattern. So here's one that starts my pattern, and then I'll hand it to you, Anna, and you can talk about what starts your pattern. But BSW, if somebody looks at it, lets me know that I'm bad, stupid, wrong, that triggers me and it starts a pattern. If they tell me what I should/shouldn't have done, that starts a pattern. I feel like Jeff Foxworthy. You might be a redneck if. You might be triggering a pattern if. So not feeling heard, or it's not fair. So what are some of yours?
Yeah, those are all good. I'm also thinking about, it can be a tone of voice. It can be a look on someone's face. It can, and often I would say on one sense, we're always looking for connection, and everything is a bid for connection. I think that was, I've done so many trainings, I can't remember who said that, but the bids for attention.
Oh, that's Gottman, I think.
Yeah, John Gottman. I've done his certified in his course. Anyway, so anytime I'm reaching out, and if someone, responds back with something other than an enthusiastic response, it depends on how tired or hungry or lonely I am. Sometimes I can sort of roll with it, but there are certain responses or certain moments when those responses will really trigger a deep, just a deep reaction.
I called it rejection. Anything that we perceive as a rejection or jealousy, so it's like looking at it, being ignored. People are saying facial expressions. When I'm expressing a need or upset and the person gets defensive or deflects or denies my reality.
I don't know, Paul, but especially for women, I think that's a collective wound, like having our reality denied. Whew, that will just get me in the fighting response.
Yeah, and men are not taught how to be with someone else's reality. Because if their partner is in pain, they think it's either my fault or my responsibility. So the longer that you're in pain, the more bad, stupid, and wrong I feel. So please, Anna, could you get out of pain? Because you're making me friggin' uncomfortable.
Yeah, we have mirror neurons. That's another thing. We do affect each other's body and emotional fields.
Yeah.
Depending, again, how resourced I am.
So let's look at the dance. So what's really important is to know what the trigger is. And one of the things that there's a book out called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And so I'm saying, and by the way, somebody just, Cherokee said, thank you, Anna. So I don't know if you're seeing the stuff there too, but in Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, I say it's the, I know that there's good pretense in there, but I think bullshit. I think it's so important to sweat the small stuff. It's so important to catch it when it's an acorn before it becomes an oak tree. Honey, when you looked at me like that, it's like that's the trigger point. Catch the pattern before it becomes a full-blown avalanche, before it becomes a full storm. So it's important to know what are the triggers. When you look at me like that, we'll just go, whoa, whoa, slow down. So let's look at where do we go in the dance. So when we get triggered, where do you go, Anna? So do you get loud or quiet? Do you get retreat or attack?
You know, it does depend, but I've tried to cultivate more of the retreat and quiet for what you were talking about. That I know when I'm triggered or I'm in a wound, if I don't take time out to calm my nervous system, calm my body and my mind down, then, woo, I mean, I can really, I had an ex that said, you should just really be a lawyer because you're so good at ripping people apart. But he was impressed with it. You know, I can really rip people apart if I don't catch myself.
So yeah, it's knowing where we go. And then when you start ripping them apart, what do? So this is a dance.
Yeah. I usually retreat, by the way, because I do have very strong energy. But
so you do that, they retreat, and the more they retreat, the more you do what?
You know, yeah. What can go? I'm actually thinking to go both ways. Because then if I retreat, that's kind of the worst case scenario when you both break off from each other and go forget it, because then there's nothing even left to work with there. That's where relationships can just die. But what you're saying here is normally if they retreat, I would attack more. You know, I have to. It's the thing that I think Cherokee just said about being ignored. It creates a panic in a human.
Yeah. And so what happens is we get in this pattern. The more I do this, the more you do that, the more you retreat, the more I attack. Because why am I attacking? I'm desperate to be heard. It's like underneath it all is, can you hear me now? Can you hear my beautiful need? Because it's like all communication, and I know you teach the same thing, is either an act of love or a cry for help. And but sometimes when we're crying for help, it comes like this: Anna, you shut down evil bitch. Come give me a hug. Can't you see I need your attention and love?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that you could roll with that, because that was just a role play, you know. But
yeah, this is an example though of what we were saying when something else takes over, the programming takes over. And whatever was downloaded, you know, the phrases, the language, the tone of voice, it affects how you see the world. The trauma will affect literally how you see someone. So they do appear to you like your enemy.
Yeah. And when the enemy image shows up, then I'm less likely to be vulnerable. And so almost everything I'm saying, every complaint, every criticism, every attack is underneath it is a beautiful need and a desperate request. And the problem is, the more desperate I become, the worse I am in communicating. And it's like part of me's heartbroken, going, how come she can't see that all I want is a hug? And meanwhile, what's coming out of my mouth is like, fuck you. Ah.
Yeah. It is a kind of beautiful, though, I will say, like, to get to the point where you have a witness, I can watch. Sometimes I can't stop myself, but I can watch it, and part of me can understand, you know, okay, I know he's retreating and I'm going to continue going, but part of me can understand he's not rejecting me. He's protecting himself.
Yeah.
And I also want to slow down with what Cherokee said about loud and attack hangs head in shame. Oh my gosh, you can have so many secondary and, you know, domino effect of it. I remember the first time that where it really comes out for me, the attacker is in traffic. I'm like a trucker. I start swearing and I start like attacking people left and right. I'm like, what am I doing? You know, I believe that energy matters and how we treat each other matters. And I don't want to be in this box driving. I'm like kind of close, just emitting these negative emotions and things. But I recognize that the moment something dangerous happens, I have this amazingly intact reptile brain that goes boom. If I'm threatened, if you watch a lizard, they don't hesitate. They don't think it through. They don't go, oh, maybe that person's stressed out. And I have this really love for it. Love for it. Versus, oh my God, I'm just a horrible person. I'm such a spiritual person, yelling at people in traffic. So the shame response, to turn that into a compassion response, is what you're saying, to understand where it's coming from, and really, and when all the work I've done with babies and children, I have literally witnessed, patterns being laid down accidentally by parents, and even myself in my journey. It's no small thing that builds the reaction that we have. That reaction just really is calling for us to meet it with tenderness.
And even as you're describing that, I can feel, and you're not even talking directly at me about that, but I can feel almost tears coming up because I'm so want to be met like that, with that compassion. I want to meet myself like that, and I want to be able to be met like that. And Angela's saying that this, describing a scene that just happened to me, that this is the reason Anna and I know this so well. It's like, we're not talking about somebody else's life. We're talking about our lives and what we've had to grow through. And I want to show you, there's 3 different ways that we can deal with this in the communication. And it's important to identify the patterns and then interrupt the patterns, and interrupt them early, and then eliminate them, replace them. So it's like, if you look at it, there's these 3 different places we can go when we're communicating. Over here, collapse, combative, and courageous. And it's courageous for me to write this in public because I'm dyslexic, and I have the shame button goes off because I know how to spell words in about 10 different ways. Normally, none of them in the dictionary. So when we get triggered, and down here, this bottom line is the trauma line, the trauma drama line. Down here at the bottom, when we get triggered, we can go into that reptile brain and either collapse or get combative. Now, if you grew up in an abusive family, like I grew up in a somewhat abusive, violent family, and other ways it was an amazing family. So I don't want it to sound one-dimensional, but my brother would beat on me when he felt like it till I collapsed. So my nervous system learned that collapsing was, when under threat, that was the safest thing, because I get less abuse if I collapsed. Other people learn to be combative. So where did you go?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that for me, it wasn't even being so much beaten on, but just the tone of voice, just not harmony, for little ones and babies. And what we really want, when you're talking about that tenderness, like, we really are so sensitive underneath all these. Sometimes we can get hardened, but I think, just people not getting along together was extremely threatening for me. And I would get really quiet, and there were actually more intense violences going on in my family. It doesn't have to be always this, like, you had a car crash, or someone was shot next to it. It can just be even the lack of warmth and care can kind of collapse. It's, if you ever watch the still experiment with babies, so we have a reaching out, innate reaching out impulse, and we'll, like you said, hi, can I have a hug? And we're saying, like, you horrible bitch, But we want that contact. And if we reach out over and over and over and don't get it, then is my sound bad for you, Paul?
It's a little garbled.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that.
I think just keep talking into the mic. I don't know that we're going to actually be able to change it for right now.
I can try turning the heater off. So I think that was about what I was going to say. I'll pause there and let you.
Okay. So if we're looking at it, I'm going to bring that back up. What I'd like you to look is, where do you go? Do you collapse? Do you get combative? Or the third one, do you get courageous? And I'll just say one more about this is I'm 6'3", 230 pounds. I spent 18 years as a commercial fisherman in Alaska. I'm a big dude and I'm a dude's dude. You know, like I speak dude, I speak guys. And I realized a couple of years ago, I was in a workshop and I went, wow, when I get triggered, I collapse. So it doesn't meet my personality at all. You know, I looked like this big threatening guy and I've collapsed. And what I had to do is be compassionate with that and go, of course, that's the pattern I learned. And if I can be courageous around that and compassionate with it, I'll spend less time collapsing. And if part of me, I can, you know, I mean, my years of commercial fisherman, I can be badass combative. It's just not how I showed up in relationships, because I watched the damage my dad did to my mom. Now, he was never physically abusive, but I watched the emotional abuse. And that was enough for me. I didn't want to be on the receiving end of that. So what we're trying to do is learn how to move from not being collapsed, not being combative, but being courageous, to being powerfully vulnerable in the relationship, so that when we get in this, and we all of us, every one of you on this call has patterns that we go to in our relationships and in our life. That's what allows us to get through the day. You know, that's where our unconscious drives us to work, or when we used to drive to work. You know, so we've got these patterns, finding out which ones support us, which ones sabotage us, and then what do we do to interrupt them, to eliminate them, to notice them. So first thing is naming them. So the more creative the names, the more fun. Like when I started doing this work, I came up with the "you started it" pattern. So like, you started it. Think about that pattern. So if I went to Anna, you started it, what's her most likely, what she's going to respond?
I don't want to say what comes to mind. Yeah. You know what? The other thing that I want to name here that's interesting with the mirror neurons, I a minute ago, before you said that and asked me to think how I would respond, I was like, you know, kind of happy and just interested. I start to feel kind of heavy and bitter and combative. That I'm mirroring you, you know? And that was another thing I learned, is like, how you start a conversation is about 90% accurate in how it will end. So if you think about what you want the outcome to be. But yeah, you started it means like, no, you're the problem.
Exactly. See, here it is. That's the beginning of the dance. I'm going to do the "you started it," and you're going to go, "No, you started it." And then see, it's this dance, and the dance gains momentum until somebody either exits or collapses or confronts the issue. So what triggers it is, she might have looked at me, she might have done something, she might have said something, and then it's like, oh, well, you started it. You said that thing. She might have no idea what she said. It might have been, she might have had gas and she had this look, you know, and I interpreted that look as it was about me. And so it starts it. So what are some other names? Can you think of some names? I'll give a couple other, Anna, but if you could give some names, and people could give some names for the dances that they've done. The "you started it" is one dance. It's
go ahead.
It's your fault, which is another one of the same thing. Your fault dance. You hurt me more. So what are some other ones that you can think of?
I'm just checking too. Does this help the sound quality at all?
Yeah, the sound quality for me is really good right now.
Okay, great. Well, one of the larger patterns I've looked at is violence towards men, which is interesting because it came about because of violence towards women. So it feels very justified. And that can look like, oh, men are just blah, blah, blah. There's this kind of dismissive, you're starting to see an enemy image. You're starting to see, oh, men just aren't as emotionally intelligent, or men just, whatever it is. Or sometimes it's just a feeling. I'll start to notice myself get this kind of like, like I said, no, you're the problem. There's a kind of stance that goes along with that. There's an energy that goes along with that. And in my head, but I'm so smart, I've done this a long time. I can figure out a lot of good reasons why I'm right. Like what you didn't do.
So what I want to tell people, just so that is we still have a little bit of time, but one of the things that's almost impossible without a mirror, it's almost impossible to see yourself. And without a mentor, it's almost impossible to see your patterns, because you think that they are an asshole. They do deserve it. I'm not in the pattern. They're the pattern. They're the problem. So part of what we're going to do at the end of this is, if people want a breakthrough session, I know some of the people on the call have been through breakthrough sessions with me or with Anna, but if you want a breakthrough session, what happens is we get clear where you are, where you want to be, and what are the patterns that are in the way, and what does it take to break those patterns? What relationship tips and tools and techniques can you do so you can start identifying the pattern before it takes over? Because there's a certain point where it takes over and Paul is gone. It's like my reptile and I'm like Mr. Compassion. And there's a time when it takes over and I'm Mr. Fuck you.
I was just seeing Angela saying, my girlfriend points out all my patterns. That can be, you don't want to use it. What is Scott Katomas said, like hitting them over the head with their own baseball bat?
Yeah, that's not a helpful pattern. Her pattern is to point out your patterns. Like my ex would point out, you're collapsed again. It's like, well, thank you for saying that. And here we go. I just want to share that. So Jerky saying Paul's breakthrough session is incredible. Yep. Thank you. And if you want a breakthrough session with us, you can put breakthrough Anna or breakthrough Paul, whichever one, because you might resonate with one of our energies more than the other. So
I want to just acknowledge too quickly, because while I've been watching, and thank you for your comment, she's commenting on some of the things she does to center herself and stay out of reactivity, and the alchemy that can happen, what we're talking about. This is like turning coal into diamonds. The worst sort of behaviors or fights or troubles that you have can become the sweetest, the most rewarding, interactions.
Yeah. And the more that we take care of ourselves, the less triggerable we are. So if we have a healthy patterns, not all patterns sabotage the relationship. If you have a pattern of if you get addicted to working out, and I say addicting liberally, but like I mountain bike, I try to mountain bike at least 3 or 4 times a week. If I take care of myself, then the more that I am available and the less triggerable I are. Speaking
all of your triggers are.
And so, I think you saw that, Anna. There's a request for you for a breakthrough session. So great. So let's look at, we've looked at what triggers a pattern. What a pattern is basically when you move pretty much from the conscious part of the mind to the reptile part of the mind, and the reptile takes over.
Can I just ask, Paul, did you say what's going to happen after they say they want a breakthrough?
No, I didn't say what's going to happen. What happens on my side is I'll contact you in the chat and I'll give you a place where you can schedule. And Anna, how do they get a hold of you so they can schedule with you?
Yeah, I'll message you, Vala, on Facebook. Yeah. And I also put my website there, which has my number. But okay, cool. I just want to make sure everyone understood what the follow through was.
Cool. And just what you understand what a breakthrough is. A breakthrough is where something becomes possible that wasn't possible before. Don't expect that in a 45-minute complimentary session, we're going to heal 30 years of patterns. what's going to happen is there's a sense of hope that opens up where you start to identify the patterns that you're in and go, oh, wow, I could have a breakthrough around that. What would my life be like if I was less triggerable and more courageous? And if I could, think about what would your life be like if you could catch the patterns when they're acorns rather than wait till they're oak trees. See, an acorn's easy to handle. An oak tree, when it falls on your head, your house, it's a different world.
On your heart.
On your heart, exactly. So what stops a pattern? So this is an important thing to do. If you catch it small, well, let me see. I think I got it here. I'll go to this one and then I'll come back to that one. There's 3 levels of trigger. So alert, alarm, action, or attack. So alert is you're lying in bed at night, you're just about dozing off, and you hear a clunk, you hear a noise. It's almost like your body feels the vibration of a noise, and your head comes off the pillow and goes, was that a sound? So you go from alert to alarm, and well, actually you started alert, and alert, is there a danger? Is here we go, briefly, is danger, or should I say is dangerous? Is there something I need to protect my from? And if you're up and alarmed, like you hear footsteps, what do I need to do? And then you can go, oh, it's just my roommate or my beloved, and they just went to the bathroom. You go right back to normal. You can go back to sleep pretty quickly. But if all of a sudden there's footsteps and you live alone, you're in attack. Do I need to retreat? Do I need to call the police? It's like in your nervous system, you might not go to sleep again that night. I literally, when I was traveling once, and I was with my wife, we were traveling around the world. We were in Hawaii staying at this place, and my wife shaking me awake going, there's somebody standing at the end of the bed. And like I woke up and there's somebody standing at the end of the bed in our hotel room. It's like I went from alert, alarm, like attack, who the fuck are you? And I'm getting out of bed. Like I am not going to lie there in a defenseless mode. I'm in the attack mode. So it's like, this is what our nervous system goes through. She looked at me that way, or that tone of voice, or whatever it is. Was she condescending? Is that an attack? Do I need to defend myself? What do I need to do? So what do you want to say about this, Anna, before we bounce back to the other slide?
Yeah, just a little. I was going to say in relationships, this can look like where you can spend the day or even periods of time triggered, and it looks like, if you can't sleep all night versus you don't get any positive connection with your partner, it's really a loss. It's painful to spend your time there versus being able to, like you're saying, go back to normal awareness, go back to a place where you can connect. And it's such it's just life changing when you can. We're going to go into triggers. I still go into triggers, but we need to more quickly come back down to where you can connect again and spend more time in the fun zone. Oh yeah, what happened to the intruder, Paul? You need to know.
So the intruder, it was weird. He said I have no idea who he really was. I was just flown in from Hong Kong. I was in that deep, jet lag sleep. And I got him. He said he was with immigration or something, and he was checking because there had been immigrants coming through there and stuff. It was a weird BS story. I'm going, give me your card. If you're legit, give me your card. I'm going to call you, I'm going to call in on you, because you don't just show up in somebody's bedroom in the middle of the night and like let yourself into their room. It was a condo that they rented out on a nightly basis. So it's like, anyway, I have really no idea who he was and what, he had a story, and I got him out, locked the door, put something against the door. I don't think he expected to find some 6'3" guy. That probably totally naked, I think, when I jumped out of bed. And I was not,
sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I was not backing down. I was in my attack mode.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an example of who's the bigger reptile. If you had come up like, oh my gosh, but when somebody will get bigger and the other person has to retreat. Yeah.
So let's look at how do you eliminate or stop a pattern. So I'm going to back up for 1 second. This pattern right here, when somebody gets triggered, a lot of times, let's talk about what doesn't work. So Anna, get triggered for a second, just in a role play here. And I'm going to do some of the things that we do that don't work.
Well, what are you talking about? You said you were going to be home. This is the 14th time you've done this, and I'll tell you exact date and times the other 13 times.
So if you could just calm down, because you always overreact.
You haven't seen anything yet.
So if you just didn't think the way you're thinking, you wouldn't be all upset. And do you really want to be?
My girlfriend, can you believe this asshole? Like, he just told me yada yada, men are blah blah blah.
All right, so telling somebody that they shouldn't feel.
Actually, I'm annoyed. It really is annoying. It's going automatically into that.
All right, so that's what doesn't work. I'm going to give you something that tends to be super helpful. Because if we're in our reptile brain, we're already defensive and we're looking for who's the enemy. Are you enemy or your ally? And if I start telling them that they shouldn't feel the way they feel, I look like the enemy. So if go ahead, do that again.
And exactly, Cherokee, I'd call it, because you need to be validated. It's frightening to not be seen. So you want me to come at you from
the exact same thing.
Yeah. You said you were going to be here. This is the 14th time you haven't showed up. I've been waiting. I made this whole beautiful setup for us. I was counting on you. I was excited 2 hours ago, and now
Wow. So, honey, what would it take for you to feel safe right now? What would it take for you to feel really heard and understood?
And I want to say here that I actually automatically took a deep breath. Sometimes when you're so highly triggered, a soft response can be more annoying. You need to sort of but what you're saying right here, I get it, because what would I need to be heard? I probably just need to cry on your shoulder. I'm really heartbroken, actually. I really look forward to spending time with you. You're my special person. You're the person that I put all this effort, and I just really, I was looking forward to it.
So what I want to ask people is, we had option A.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is normal. Like, that's normal communication. And we had option B, because it would have been very easy for me to perceive Anna, when she first started, as an attack and that I needed to defend, versus leaning in and seeing my partner in pain and going, wow, what do you need? And you see, like, almost in a sentence, it got cleaned up. So how many of you want that? So what I'd love to do is just want that in there. Just whoever wants that way, because it's a muscle to be developed. And I was on a call a week ago, and I watched myself go right to the defensive thing. It's so easy, especially when it's with people that you really care about, and you're afraid that you hurt their feelings or you're going to lose their love and affection. And it's so easy to want to defend. So what was the difference between those two, Anna, for you?
Basically, to boil it down to a basic level, is you were soft towards me. You were connecting rather than disconnecting. You were meeting me, or trying to meet me, rather than pushing me away or defending yourself.
Yeah, and you didn't have to fight for how you felt. I met you where you're at.
Gave me space. You immediately just dropped in and gave me space.
Yeah. And it's amazing. By the way, guys, just so that you know, and I say guys, but women can do this too. It's one of the greatest aphrodisiacs there is to meet the feminine where they're at.
Mhm.
Because if you can be with if they can trust you with their feelings, they'll trust you more with their body and with their life. And if they can't trust you with their feelings, then why would they want to trust you with their heart and with their body?
Can I say, I almost feel like for men, one of the things that popped in is if you trust their motives. If you trust their motives, you know, like that men really want to do good and they're trying to be your hero. Versus a lot of times we cast these really negative. But I want to say to Angela here that do you doubt it would be fixed that fast? Another thing that happened here, Paul, you responded in a different way, but I've also done so much of this that it could have taken me a lot longer. This could have been in a real life conversation where you don't all have these skills. It could be like, oh, man, blah, blah, and you would have to listen. But because I've done a lot of this, I was able to immediately drop into what was really underneath it all. And the more either any person in the situation, like the more I have the skills, the more I can bring it around to this place. I'm not saying it's always like this picture perfect. We're doing a quick example, but yeah.
And I want to be clear, though, it has been like 2 sentences at times when I am not defensive.
Mm.
Because if you think about it this way, if you're in bed and you want to make love, do you yell at your partner or do you whisper? See, the only time we yell is we're desperate to be heard. The only time we get angry is like we're begging, we're going, can you hear me now? And if I'm listening, you don't continue to yell. Like, I'm hearing you. Sometimes I
Maybe
yell.
a different example, but
Okay. Well said. Yes, take me now. Take me now. Okay. Got it. That's great. All right. So I just want to share one last big picture. This is a big picture because I want people to see where this fits in. I was in New York about 2 summers ago, and I went on the.
I think it's a little small for me. Can you make the chart?
I will make it bigger. Okay.
There you go. That's it.
And then I can blow up each one of them. I was in New York City, and I was on the subways, and the subway was overwhelming and complicated. There's like 800 and some miles of track, 400 and some stations, 28 lines. And what I needed was a map. And the thing is, most people don't have a map for relationships. So we talked today about patterns. And patterns, what I want you to do is see where patterns fit in the map. So when you're looking at relationships, so this, you might want to watch this part of it 2 or 3 times. You might want to screen capture it. But when I work with people in 3 main areas. I work with them on their heart set, their skill set, and their mindset. And when it comes to your heart set, that's where your partner serves as your friend, your partner, and your lover, and you're getting your needs met. Your needs either feel precious or feel like a burden. Does that make sense, Anna?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big dump of information really quickly.
Yeah, but yeah.
The second area is your skill set. Do you feel skilled? And Anna, you brought it up earlier, like going to the gym, spending 20 or 30 years of working on your skills. This is so important. Do you feel underprepared or well-equipped? And when we look at skills, do you know how to clear up the past, connect and get present, create possibilities for the future? If you don't clear up the past is in the present, no possibility for the future. We're going to do other calls where we're going to dive into this more in depth. I just wanted you to see where this fits on the map. And here's where we were today. We were talking about your ROS, your relationship operating system, which is made up of your habits, your patterns, and your beliefs. So this is the big map. And we did a deep dive right there on patterns today. We could gone into any one of these areas. They're all tied together. So what I would love to do is have you type in, what was your breakthrough from today? What did you learn? Because that would be one of the precious needs that Anna and I both have, we all have, is the need to contribute. And how do we know we've contributed or not? Well, you let us know what you got from today. So if you got something from today, that would be, you'd be giving us back a gift, and we would know that we contributed. And if you want to have a breakthrough session with Anna or me, just as I said earlier, breakthrough session, mine lasts about 45 minutes. It's a deep dive. We get clear where you are, where you want to go. What are the patterns and habits that in mindsets that's getting in the way of you having the relationship of your dream, to be able to work through stuff. So if you want that, type in breakthrough Paul or breakthrough Anna, or message us personally. If you don't want to put it on here, you can message us personally and keep it private. So Anna, any closing thoughts?
Well, I want to respond to Julie, is it? Then saying I screwed up my relationship. That I remember when I first started learning this, and I had so much grief because all of a sudden I had clarity for all this loss and all this damage. But there's what I've learned to move towards more is you can go into a shame response or a guilt response, or you can go into just that courageous clarity. It takes, like this graceful place. There's grace in it. That you can see it without contributing more pain to yourself on it. Because this is just what we were taught. And we really work with the skills we have. And to be specific, like, if you want to put in what kind of clarity did you get here, instead of like, oh, I screwed it up, like, oh, I'm going into, attacking rather than this present listening, asking, what can I do to make you safe? Something specific that you can work on, because that way you can, there's like hope, and there's there's a goal, and there's something you can do rather than courageous clarity. Awesome.
Yeah. See, I wrote this book because I've gone through one divorce, four broken engagements. I wrote the book because I really needed to anchor in the stuff that I had learned, because I've screwed up so many relationships in my life. And you could get bitter, or you could get better. You could take what you learned and grow and expand your heart. There's a Japanese art where they take broken pots and put it together with gold and make it more beautiful. And it's like, I see that in Anna, I see that in myself, that we've taken, our broken parts, and rather than get bitter, we get better. And it's hard work. And I've had many mentors, Scott Katamas is one, Marshall Rosenberg, Marshall Thurber, Byron Katie, Tony Robbins. I used to work for Tony Robbins. And so these are all mentors that have helped me get better rather than bitter. So we're going to wrap it up. This is part of, and I'll give you one last statement in a second. This is part of something that we started when the whole lockdown and COVID started. Scott Katamas and me and Debbie G got together, and we decided twice a day we were going to do some Facebook Live. So for twice a day for I don't know how many months, one of the love coaches has done something, and I do mine on Thursday evenings and Saturday afternoons. Scott does something called Saturday Night Alive, which is a fabulous show. He's got people like John Gray and Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra and Michael Beckwith from Agape, just amazing guests that he does. He does something on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. So you can always get great stuff here. And if you go to Love Coach Academy, you can find out where the other ones. One of my friends, Heidi Love does something on recovery with Tim. And so they're doing how to be compassionate with your recovery. And so that's it. We love to do this. I'm honored to do this with Anna, who's got, as people get, a combination of great wisdom and a beautiful heart. So Anna, any last statements you have?
Thank you, Paul. I just wanted to say a quick note about Paula mentioned you could use it instead of what do you need to feel safe, like what do you need to feel heard? Once you figure out what your triggers are, then you can, like, what do you need to feel like you matter? That's a big one. Well, I really, like, I could just keep going. I really do love this. I could keep going for hours, but I'm really appreciating you, Paul, and everyone that showed up, because just like you said, you wrote the book to work on the skills you need. The more time I spend in this, thinking about it, talking about it, it's easier to support other people from the outside sometimes, the more I grow. And I really do want all the struggles and all the wisdom that I've gained to serve the world. And it's like if I could go back in time and help that girl that I was, so if any of this resonated with you.
Yeah. And don't wait to it's called the PONR, the point of no return in relationships. Men tend to wait till it's too late. Sometimes women do it too, but don't wait till it's too late. Get the skills now, get my book, get somebody else's book, sign up, get yourself a mentor. You actually deserve to have support, to be healed, to have that. So, and Angela also said that she wants a breakthrough with Anna. Okay, now I'm starting to feel breakthrough envy. Everybody wants Anna and nobody wants me.
I'll give you a breakthrough, Paul.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And this is going to be on Facebook. So please, if you got something out of it, share this link with other people, have them come and join, and listen to it, and listen to it again, at least a couple of times. There's so much information here. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Have a great 2021.
Start to a new year.
Yeah. Ciao.